live stream. Hello, everybody online. Ian Hamilton is online live. I hope he can hear us, and I think we can also ask him to say a few words later. As Hanan just said, this is going to be an interactive session, a truly interactive session. I will speak for about 5 minutes, not much longer, and then it's your turn. And we have two different engagement formats planned for this session. So what are we talking about? We're talking about the global status report on buildings and construction, which the GlobalABC has been issuing since 2016. And Jonathan, in one of his interventions yesterday, said, well, we want to discuss the revolution of the buildings global status report. I would like to put a bracket around the R, the first R in this word revolution, and rather think about an evolution, but let's see where we're going to. Maybe you are all going to argue for a revolution. Let's see. I want to start just giving you a very, very brief presentation about a little history. So if we could have the next slide, please. A little history about the Buildings-GSR. And we like to call it a global reference document because in its many editions, it really has become a report which defines benchmarks for the sector, decarbonization benchmarks, policy benchmarks, action benchmarks. And it is a document which also always has a lot of case studies, best practice examples from industry, from policymakers, from finance, whatever. The focus is shifting from year to year a little bit, but it is a comprehensive library also of good examples. Next slide, please. If we look at the history, this is just these are just all the covers. We so far have published 9 editions, starting back in 2016. And of course, all these editions, I think over time actually have become thicker and have become more comprehensive. Next slide, please. And what I want to also show you is this little overview of all the contributing organizations and the funders who have been supporting the report over the many years. Now, this list is not complete. If your organization has contributed to it and you don't see your logo on it, then I do have to apologize, but we simply couldn't fit everybody on here. But the point here is to show that we have different kinds of organizations. We have non-profit organizations coming from every continent. We have governmental organizations who have been supporting this report for many, many years. And we have individual experts also from academia who have made contributions. So it's really a very broad and large group which is helping every year to put this report together. Next slide, please. And what we know from the last edition is that all these people have contributed, which you can't read. It's way too small, but this just shows you how many different people and organizations we managed to integrate every year and to convince to join the report as such. Next slide, please. In terms of the impact we have, this is, of course, something which is extremely hard to measure because we don't know what a reader does with the content of the report, whether someone who downloads the report really takes actions, implements 1 or 2 of the recommendations, depending on their sphere of influence. So we help ourselves simply by talking about the download figures, which we can observe from the website. But we also don't know if someone downloads the report and maybe this person emails it to 10 other colleagues, so it doesn't appear in the download statistics. So what we see is that the 2022 report was downloaded over 40,000 times. And in that edition, we actually also had executive summaries in different languages, which also had a significant download numbers, achieved significant download numbers. And in 2023, we already had over 46,000 downloads. So that's a growth of around about 15% from one year to the next. We also had really good media coverage in 2022 two. It was 100 articles roundabout. Again, this is probably not complete because we're missing some. And in 2023, we already had over 200. I cannot present you the figures for the current report because we are still counting. Malia, next slide, please. But we know, and next slide, please, that it definitely, again, got some media coverage. We only launched it 3 weeks ago on the 17th of March, so 3 weeks ago. And this is just to give you a little bit of an idea how the media coverage was so far from around the world. But this is definitely not a complete analysis. And of course, this is a report which has a long shelf life, so we will collect the download figures over the years, over the coming months. Right, and with that, I already want to close my little presentation and come to really the interactive part. And for the interactive part, we want to divide it in two parts. First of all, I would like you to all take out your phones and scan the QR code. We have a number of questions for you prepared. We will spend about 25 minutes on this, and then we go into a discussion so that you can deepen your arguments, because I know it's often very difficult to write longer sentences on the phone or make deeper contributions. So this is just to gather your first input and your first ideas. And we have a number of quite technical questions prepared, and we would like you to provide the answers to that. So the very first question is, what key indicators you think should be presented in future editions of the Global Status Report on Buildings and Construction? So take a minute or so, no rush, think about it's a little bit like Christmas today. You can share your ideas, your wishes with us to inform the discussion about the future evolution. It doesn't work? Slido doesn't work? Okay, then
you can hear me, but it should be working.
Okay, it seems to be working now. Does everybody see this question? So does it work for some people, but not for, okay. Malia, do you want to use the microphone?
Yeah, I was going there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, so when you log into the QR code, please select the room Buildings-GSR and not the Marta plenary room to ensure that you can access the questions. Thank you.
Okay, and we also have people online who can contribute to that at the same time. I think I'll have to step down to read everything. Yeah, if there is a way for you to type in your name also, and when you register in Slido, it will be helpful, but it's not a must. There will be a question later when we really ask for who gave us that answer. And it's probably difficult to form a word cloud out of this because you're all using different words, so the individual contributions might be quite different, but that's already very helpful. Malia, will it be possible to see everything on one screen? Malia, can we show all the answers on one screen, or is that's impossible, right? No? Okay, good. Anyway. Okay, you have many ideas. That's excellent. Okay, this is just to get us warmed up. We have a few more questions with some details. Maybe we'll close this one right now. Maybe 10 more seconds in case you have one other additional indicator you would like to mention. And if not, good, then we're at 49 contributions. Thank you very much. Then we go to the next one. Which regions or geographies should we cover in the report? You know it's a global report, but in the past, it was 2 years ago, we had a deep dive on Africa. A really long chapter on the situation in Africa, produced with the help of experts from the continent. And so, do you have any specific wishes for regions? The risk here, of course, is that we get regions from all the world and we recreate the world, but maybe you also have a specific reason why you want to recommend a region or a geography. If that's the case, then please add it. Fast-growing construction markets, yes. Emerging economies. South America to align with a COP location. That's a good idea. Yep. I see Antonio nodding. Well, then we have to get going because that's in 8 months, right? Okay, maybe we can close this already with 30 contributions. Thank you very much. Then, yes. This is about the target audiences. Well, you probably know that the report produces facts and figures which are targeted at policymakers, but we also often cover innovation and development in industry. So often for that, the target audience is more industry. But what do you think should be the main target audiences, singular or plural, for the report as such? It would be very helpful to get your opinion and input on that. And you can be quite specific. You don't just have to say policymakers. You can say, well, what kind of policymakers? Or maybe even in, yeah, what kind of function? Okay, it looks like there is quite a dominance for policymakers, data providers, investors, developers. Okay. Shall we come to an end with a question? Everybody had a chance to respond? Yeah, then we close that. Thank you very much. And move to the next one, please. So what tools and products do you think the Buildings Global Status Report should include? What should be made available? Now, when we use the word tools, of course, it's not concrete tools to do something, but it's more what kind of channels should we use to get the message across? How should we package the messages, the findings, the analysis? That's the idea behind that question. Using AI, whoever wrote that, please be more specific, because AI is a technology which can do many, many, many things. So the current status and forecasts, annual report card, data sets of regional indicators, standards adoption tracker, searchable, graphs to be used, online platform to play with numbers. Okay. Living test beds. Okay. It looks like a lot of you are looking for interactive tools, searchable databases, tools to generate graphs, a media communication kit. Yes, thank you. All GlobalABC products. Whole life carbon assessment tools. Oh, wow. Okay, I think I opened a Pandora's box with that question. But I mean, it's, it's like Christmas. Santa doesn't bring every present, but the purpose of this exercise is, of course, to get your collective input and intelligence to develop ideas how we can really evolve or revolutionize the product as such. Best cases, fewer key messages. Aha, okay. Yes, there are many, many key messages, normally around 10 or so in each report, covering the various topics. Good. I think all the participants are done with typing. Then we will probably close this question as well. Well, I still see people typing. Key question, are we on track? Yes, the buildings climate tracker. Okay, good. Then let's close this question. Thank you again, and move to the next one. A little bit related maybe to this first question, what kind of communication products do you think we should generate to make sure that the impact is greater? At the moment, it's basically a very long report. And there is also a PowerPoint slide deck summarizing the main messages, which we normally use for the launch, and which is also downloadable. But that's it at the moment. So what ideas would you have for other products which we could produce in the future? Animations, interactive data. Case studies, interactive dashboards. Okay. We have a little bit of a repetition from what we've heard before. The interaction is very important. Thank you for the compliment. Keep up the good work in terms of social media. I think that goes to the GlobalABC Secretariat who's doing all that. A weekly chart on WhatsApp. Okay. Invite Key Construction Association to co-edit chapters. Segmented results for different target groups. Expert interviews. Okay. A full portfolio of tools is needed, from bite-sized to deep dive assets. We're failing as a sector to tell our story well enough. I agree that we can definitely improve. But yesterday we had Maya's speech, and the one thing which resonated with me, why is it so damn complicated? Why do you make it so damn incomprehensible? We have to get our message across in a well, in a simpler way, in a more convincing way. Yeah. Okay. Good. Shall we slowly come to a close with that as well? Focus on what's new this year. Regional launch events. Yes, we often rely on, of course, the online dissemination. The launch event is always live streamed, but that is, of course, not the same as having a physical event in different regions. No doubt about that. Okay, good. Then maybe let's move to the next question. I think we're coming close to the end with a question. What is the biggest shortcoming of the current report? And how should it be addressed? So don't be shy, be open, be critical. What do you think is really not working at the moment, or what's the biggest shortcoming? Length, yes. It is a very long report. And every year we have the discussion, yes, this year we're going to produce a shorter report. And then we have contributions which are often long, which is not an excuse to have a short report, a long report, because they can be edited to a shorter size. But we simply get a lot of very, very interesting contributions. That's no excuse. That's just a little bit of an explanation why the report every year we start out saying we want to have 50 pages, and then it always comes to 90 pages, 100 pages, or something around that. A crisp summary. Okay, focus on the most important, cut out the rest for other sub-theme reports. That could help to deal with the length, yes, to have, yeah, different outputs and not just only one. Not enough good graphics. Find the numbers and info you need. Use more infographics there. Okay, so in principle, make it much more visual. Okay. An abridged version. Yeah. Making sure we reach the policymakers in the way we want them to be reached. Okay, you're still typing, so we'll leave that open for a little bit more. We don't track resilience and adaptation progress. Yes. Okay, good. Again, the length. Right. Okay, then let's slowly come to a close for that question. And then we have, well, people are still typing. I don't want to cut that short. That's very important. Because sometimes when you are so close to producing the report, you often do not see the things that really should be improved. You don't see the forest for the trees. Right, but if you're all done, then we can maybe move to the next one, which is also the last one. Yes, from the criticism to what do you think is the greatest? Well, we want to end on a high note. Well, it's not the end. It's the end of the online way to have the discussion. What's the biggest positive aspect you see in the report as such? Technology fails? No, I see 11 people participating. Consistency, convening power. It does exist. That's great. Thank you. Yeah, well, I think it's not a given that it does exist. Yeah, true. Okay, important for the work done in the hubs, the deep dives, examples and case studies. Wonderful. Good. And this is not only just good to know, it's also good to know what to keep, because if we talk about, well, making it shorter or maybe having different products, it's very, very important to know what's appreciated and what's important for you, what we definitely should not remove or throw out or reduce in size or focus. Okay. Now this more or less brings the online consultation to a close. 2 people still typing, and we will have about 30 contributions. Ian, I know you're online and you can hear us. I don't know whether we can open the microphone for you. If you want to say anything about this or draw any conclusions, Malia is just going to open the microphone for you.
Available online. I'm not sure if
Yes, now you're online and now we can hear you in the room.
Excellent.
So, well, please.
Hello from Paris, and thank you very much. I really appreciate, Oliver, as you've kind of led through the great contributions that we're looking to be able to or evolve the report. And that this community effort really is, great thanks to all of yourselves, to the GlobalABC at UNEP, who really steer this each year to I think to have great impact. And really what we're looking to try and ensure is that we're taking on board for all those who collaborate around this report to be able to highlight these opportunities of making it more useful. Our readers, our stakeholders, those who we engage with throughout the year, we want this report to continue to be as impactful as it can be, so that we see people pointing to it as the main resource around the building and construction sector for what we need to be doing next. So I'm really grateful for you all to contribute the ideas, and I've obviously put a few in there myself. So I'm looking forward to being able to work with everybody in the team to figure out how we best respond to those to really do what's being sought. Thanks very much, Oliver. Appreciate you leading through this.
Thanks, Ian, for joining us in your busy schedule. So what we would like to do now is to have an open discussion with you, because you had basically the opportunity to write a few words. I know it's often very constrained doing that in Slido. So we would like to have a more open discussion with you to get your feedback, what we could and should do differently, what you would like to see, why you would like to see it, and what kind of opportunities you actually see to make it happen. Because it is, of course, also very important to understand, well, what's the feasibility of a specific idea? How can we really translate it into action? So we have the microphone here. We have this microphone there. Who would like to start? Jörg, we have. Yes, Hanan, if you would moderate, yes, that would be fantastic. I was looking for you there in the back.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, Jörg Ostermeier, I'm leading the Data Hub, and my main point would be that I think we're at a point in the development of the GlobalABC where we can use bottom-up projects to inform the global status report in a way that we weren't able to do before. There is so many projects going on the ground, creating so much data, and then every time at the end of the year, when we are writing the GSR, we say, it would be really good to have more on-the-ground data. And I think we need to standardize it. And Oliver, we have discussed it in the past when we're now moving on and rolling out things like the building passport. It has to be a tool informing the GSR. It has to be strengthening the role and the position of the GLABC to have access to really unique data, because bluntly, it will make GSR, it will make the Global Alliance more fundable. It will be more attractive as a receiver of money from governments if we continue to develop something unique that what you cannot find elsewhere. So I think that would be my main takeaway: how to link closer activities like the building passport and make data going into the GSR a mandatory part of the projects that we are doing on the ground, where we collect data on buildings, and how to fill such a gap. And here comes the energy competition.
Yeah, thanks. Maybe just a quick note from the IEA. We have shared the data since several years. We're very happy to do so on energy emission building codes. And it's very good that the community uses the shared data, and we go out with the same numbers. Maybe something that we could do more from the IEA side is also to align on a shared narratives on some of the key messages that we find over the years. Every year we identify some key topics. So for example, last week we published a State of Innovation reports, lots of innovations in buildings. On Thursday, the Energy and AI report is coming out, so I also recommend reading. We also had the Global Energy Review a couple of weeks ago, and in all these sparse publications, there are some important messages for buildings. And sometimes I realize we don't properly channel those to you, so it's something we can improve. I can just say an example in the Global Energy Review. We did understand that in 2024, emissions increased 1%. Not just buildings, all sectors. But what's interesting is that half of this increase is coming from weather, and heat waves really played a special roles. And what's more interesting is that all the increase of coal demand in 2024 was led by space cooling, on how peak demand was managed in Southeast Asia in particularly. So maybe sometimes we have lots of these messages, but we can do more communication to make sure this feeds the Buildings-GSR in next editions, and yeah, happy to do so.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chiara. Yes, and also to Jörg, I think we can definitely use the data which we're generating in many of the initiatives within the GlobalABC and the collaboration we have with the IEA since the very beginning to streamline the messages, to have more relevant political messages which are also aligned. No, absolutely. Thank you.
Just following up on what Chiara said from the IEA, very much in line with this adding to the messaging and to the content and analytics that are being produced. Also within UNEP, we are producing analytics on the buildings and construction sector, be it nature-based solutions, energy efficiency, different aspects of the buildings, and also encouraging the integration of this information already within UNEP to be fed in a structured manner in the global status report as well. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Clara. I think that what we're often struggling with a little bit simply is the timeline of the production, because so far the Global Status Report was always launched at a specific date, and it was published once a year, every 12 months. And production timelines of other organizations like the IEA or other UNEP reports do not always coincide. So we sometimes simply have we have to solve the very practical problem that information or data is not necessarily available when ideally we would like to have it. But maybe there are solutions around that. And in particular, if we consider doing different publications in the course of the year, I have to stand in the middle, this might be a solution. But absolutely good points. Yes, thank you very much. Anand, you've left me, but it's okay. We'll just moderate. Sorry.
Margaret's with me. She was kind enough to share it. I haven't finished reading this year's report yet, but as most of what I wanted to say was already in the answers there, many of those. But I think there's one thing that I wanted to stress. I think there is a need to look at the reporting from a social perspective, not just from a buildings perspective. I think part of the discussion that we had here had to do with vulnerability, poverty, social housing, affordable housing. So although those aspects are more social related than building related, they are significant for developing countries. If we are to move this agenda further, and bearing in mind that buildings dynamics are accelerating in the developing world, in the global south, whatever we want to call it, I think we need to look at how stakeholders from the global south read this report. And I'm not 100% sure how to approach this fully, as the report has a very specific characteristic, but I think we should, for the next edition, kind of think of ways of approaching the social dimension with a fresh look.
And does that mean affordability, but also resilience and accessibility to decent housing? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Hello, this is Thomas from Germany. I like to highlight a different aspect here and to say the report was not just a front runner, it was an icebreaker in macroeconomic perspective on buildings construction and real estate industry, let us say. And perhaps we should also enlarge the title to include real estate industry, because real estate industry taking the decisions. But you know, I like to highlight this macroeconomic perspective, the cross-sectoral approach taking polluter pays principle. Because in most of the countries, still today, our sector or branch is still underestimated. But why? Because they take source principle and allocate just direct emissions to buildings and operation of buildings without indirect and without embodied. And so every year we are waiting for this report to have latest figures, this close to 40, this famous close to 40% following a cross-sectoral approach. And also if we are looking around here in such conferences, there is still a deficit in a very clear statement. We have to follow a cross-sectoral approach, taking into account the upstream and downstream branches, and to have to deal with the direct, indirect, and embodied emissions here. And so thank to you, to this report. Some countries are inspired by this. Now we have also in Germany a similar report, also close to 40. And I think this is very important to highlight the importance. Also Roland mentioned this yesterday. We must bring this message to the policymakers, the importance of our sector and the potential what we can contribute. So thank you for this.
Thank you very much. Yes, also on the question about upstream and downstream emissions, embodied emissions, we know that it's currently not in the full focus of the report, but we've recognized that, and we're currently working on a project to change that significantly also in the next edition. It's something which has started to be addressed. Yes, thank you.
Before the next question from the audience, I just want to point to the fact that online there's a lot of support for working more with the hubs and the information coming out of the hubs, which we try to do through the Buildings-GSR task force. So I guess the point taken here is we have to do that maybe a bit more.
Yeah.
Vincent Martinez, Architecture 2030. I've been a reviewer of the task force for the last 2 years. 2 points. One is the task force happens after the report is mostly drafted and written, so more transparency and inclusion in the development of the outline of the report. I know you asked for contributions here, but in a joint effort of many members, whether that's the hubs or the working groups, to also support the outline of that before it is begun drafted. The second is the evolution of topic areas, as was brought up by our colleague, and focus on embodied carbon, and thank you for referencing that. The report a number of years ago had a great section on embodied carbon, and then there was not consistency in keeping that up. And so part of it is, how do we remain consistent in the methodology so we can compare year over year whether or not we're making progress, with a recognition that things evolve and change. And so particularly embodied carbon is one of those things. Also the way we view policies and inputs into the metrics of the global tracker. We focus specifically on new building codes as opposed to including into the tracker existing existing building performance metrics, which I know is a big part of your work in Europe, happening in North America and many other areas. How do those policies get integrated and whether or not we're on track? We are making progress. We often talk about the importance of new construction, which of course is critical, but much of our building stock will remain into the future. And so making sure that that's incorporated in the progress that we're making. So consistency and yet evolution.
Yeah. Let me just react quickly to the consistency point. What we have had in the past years, also I mentioned the Africa deep dive we had sort of one-off funding available from a funder to cover a specific topic. And it was the case with the Whole Life Carbon chapter, which we had a few years ago. It was the case with the Africa chapter. And so it's often not possible to basically continue a topic which was started in 1 year. But we also see this as a shortcoming. And so we hope with a broader and more stable funding base, we can ensure that consistency. But just to explain actually why that has happened. And your point about the task force, yes, fully taken on board. I think we want to make an effort to integrate the task force, the members, everyone here in the room, whoever is interested, earlier in the process from the beginning. Thank you.
Yes, I have 3 points. So maybe the first, to more valorize data published under the new FCC transparency obligation of countries. Now, every 2 years, you have a biennial report, so you can dive, it's a little work to do, but for key countries, for important emitting countries, or you can have some Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3 assumption and emission. Like that, I can say that in Brazil, construction Scope 1, Scope 3 is around 5.3% of the global emission of Brazil. So as you said, it's not so much important like in Europe, where it's around 25 or 27. So you can have some highlights, very interesting, based on this data. Second point, I think that when we disclose general data on energy, so it's really useful to have 3 categories: high income countries, China, the rest, because China is almost always in construction something like around 40%. So if you want to have a general trend, so you can't understand what's happened. So when China is decreasing its emission at home, so you think it's a global trend, but it's not a global trend. So and third, I think that this general report should help people who have no time to understand what has been published related to our issue by an international organization. So what are the key data that have been published on key messages, like that we don't have to go through this very interesting report that we have no time to go through. So if you're interested in buildings, you go first through the GSR, and if you have interest, you go after to the other IFC, OECD, and also publication.
So to really ensure that the report also has a low entry barrier, basically, that it's really very accessible for people who want to just get an overall overview, but then also leads into the deeper analysis. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I'll just abuse my position of moderator to say that I hear a lot of talk about emissions, embodied emissions, direct emissions, but this is about climate action as a whole. So we should also see how we get more valuable input from the hubs, from the adaptation report of the UN on adaptation as well into the report. Yeah. Over to you, Will.
Thank you, Oliver. Will Wild from the Climate Champions team. The report for me is really good, actually. It really lands a really clear message, as Thomas was saying, about the importance of the sector, straight to policymakers. But for me, it's the stories of people, the stories of how the solutions are creating jobs, how they're reducing inequalities, and how they're improving health, improving resilience, that really helps it cut through. And it was great to see there is a chapter on that in the latest report, but it would be fantastic if that could bring an equally compelling headline, that we're not just a massive part of the problem, but actually tackling this sector is a massive opportunity for people everywhere.
Yeah, thank you. Well, this is all about the communication strategy and how we develop the narrative and what storylines do we pull out of the report. Yes, absolutely.
I don't think we have any further questions, Albert, so if you want to sum up or...
Well, what we basically have a little bit after this discussion is also, well, what kind of contributions, some people have answered already, could you make to the next or future editions of the Buildings-GSR? In case your name doesn't come up automatically, it would, no, sorry, can we go, Malia? Can we go back to, yes, thank you. That we stay on this question, please. So what is it you think you could or would like to contribute? And ideally, if you could write your name or your organization's name also to it, so that we can also do a direct follow-up if there are any additional contributions, or have you filled that in all? Okay, one participant, yeah, okay. Some more coming. So just to maybe answer the question on the GSR task force directly, the GSR task force is normally managed by the GlobalABC Secretariat. And for the next edition, we simply, because we just released the last one 3 weeks ago, we haven't discussed yet when we're going to start the task force and how it's going to be managed. But the Secretariat team normally does that. We will definitely let you know in the coming weeks, also depending a little bit on the follow-up discussion we will have about actually the next question, to which I want to come in a moment because I don't want to cut this short. Okay. Yeah, the big question always is, what's the ideal launch opportunity and launch hook? And in 2024, it was an obvious opportunity to launch it at the Global Forum on Buildings and Climate in Paris. And this year we launched it in the context of the international conference organized by the German Foreign Ministry and the German Climate and Energy Ministry together in Berlin, the so-called Berlin Energy Transition Dialogue. But what kind of future opportunities do you see, or do you think we should use? What's a good launch time in the year? Do you see any specific hooks other than the COP? And maybe also with that question, how can we make sure that it's not just perceived as a report which is associated with a specific geography, but that it's really truly a global report? What could that be? Just as a bit of input. And Ian, just a question to you. I know it's your lunch break, and I think you have only until 1 o'clock, but I just wanted to ask whether you want to have any additional contribution in case you're still there. I'm not 100% sure.
Albert, I'm not sure if you can still hear me.
No? Yeah.
I'm still here.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Very good. Yes. No, just to say, again, this is great. I think having a conversation around, the process by which the report gets built up, making sure that we balance the realities of if we wanted this inclusive report that draws on the resources, the efforts that are, as you said, available through the years they emerge, but also have a way of being able to streamline and make sure that, as Chiara said, that the messages are capable of kind of creating the change, the atmosphere that we want to really highlight as to how things need to be moving forward. That is tricky, but I think by having an effort around that process, I think we can come a lot closer to that. So on that basis, because I will be stepping away, I do appreciate everybody's time and contribution. Oliver, thanks so much for leading it. But I'll be looking forward to helping support everybody in this effort going forward.
Okay. Thank you, Ian, for sacrificing your lunch break in your busy day. See you soon. We'll be in touch soon. Okay. Mario.
Your final words?
My final words are really... Sorry, do we have any other questions? That would be my final words. Yves Laurent, no?
I think
on this topic? Yes? On the global status report? Yeah? Yeah? Okay, go ahead.
I had to go out and come back,
That's
so I don't know
totally okay.
where we are. I think we need to streamline our work in GlobalABC. We've been streamlining it through, well, yesterday, Jonathan presented this matrix of how it works. We have the Declaration Chaillot that is more or less following this matrix also. I think this structure should inspire the Global Status Report. There's more or less everything that we want to do. And this would be clearer for everybody if the Global Status Report was reporting on the work, on the strategy that we already defined all together, meaning Declaration Chaillot and this matrix. That would be structuring the report. There's nearly everything we need in it. Maybe there's some things missing, but I don't see very much things that are missing. So I would advocate for a simple structure, mainstreaming, having clear messages, following clear lines, like materials, like things like that. That's
okay, thank you.
And sorry, and this would serve the ICBC as a report that would fuel really the decisions of the ICBC, and maybe being a way of reporting for countries within the ICBC. Because otherwise we're going to have a report on ICBC and the Declaration Chaillot, and then a global report is going to be very blurry.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So rethinking the structure of the report compared to the structure how the GlobalABC is organizing itself. Okay. Good. Well, then I just wanted to say thank you very much for all your input and your contributions. As I said in the beginning, this is a real team effort. And we see ourselves as the facilitators and enablers to make sure that all the membership can make the contributions to the Global Status Report, and it's serving, of course, your interests and needs, and that it also supports the goals which the GlobalABC has. So we will take all this back home to our desks and offices and discuss it in particular with the Secretariat, discuss it within the steering committee, and then you will hear from us in a few months how we plan to roll out the next edition and what we're going to do with your ideas, what's feasible in the short term, in the midterm, in the longer term, and that we have a fantastic next edition whenever we will decide that it's going to be released again. So thank you very much for all your contributions, and then I'll hand over to you for a final announcement on some other topics before we break for lunch.
Yes.